life is gone. Now you work for us. Fee.
Welcome, you made it to the part of the video where I explain how I made this very simply using Clipchamp and Higgsfield as the source of content. Now, this video is prompted by the new function in Higgsfield where we can actually generate clips of videos more accurately. So if you can see, we now have this function called Cinema Studio. And what's cool about it is that we have widescreen 21:9 aspect ratio, cinema style clips that we can now make. And we have access to image generation as well as video generation. So I'm going to start off with how I actually got my images to get generated first. And basically, I needed to get my idea into the images first for all the clips, and then obviously added motion to it. So that's the short gist of it. But here are some, I guess, tips on generating those images. So if we go to the image section, I started off with testing which of the image generators that I liked most, and I ended up going with Nano Banana Pro as my base model for image generation, just because of the art style. I like that kind of art style, and I could also add a bunch of reference images for the primary image to get generated. So at the bottom here, all I did was write out what I wanted the image to look like, and then obviously you can upload up to 14 images as a base reference for that base image. And I went ahead and just started to get a V in a style that I liked. So I got here this one, and this was going to be my reference image to put into all of my conversions. So if you can see here, for an Adobe Pro, we can actually start with a resolution of, or aspect ratio of 21:9. We still need to convert it to the uh, other version. So even though if we get it to 21:9, we will still need to convert it into another image first before the video generation step. So just pay that, pay mind to that. All right. So what we have to do is go ahead and generate all the images that we want for the trailer. Here you can see I went ahead and generate most of them. The ultra wides are actually the conversions in the Cinema Studio app. The base images here, some of them did not work out very well. I did like GPT image 1.5 for some of the action sequences, but I still had to work around it because it didn't do the best at, recreating the scene that I wanted in my mind. So once we have the image that we like this GPT image of the Arasaka dude, we then have to go to the Cinema Studio portion of this. So in the Cinema Studio portion of this, what we do is we have to upload that image into this pane over here. So you can see most of the image generations that you already did here. So you can go ahead and just click and upload it. And this is going to convert our image into the 21:9 aspect ratio, but also it will convert into something new called the camera effect, which you can see here we have basically the camera that we use to film. So most of these cameras are actually cinema cameras, so they're pretty high end. They're not like the cheaper ones. So you can basically mirror the effect of using that camera in your cinema shot. So I kind of went, I think, a bit overboard on the action sequences. So they didn't look as realistic. But as you can see with some of the eye features, the opening scene, that looked pretty realistic. And that's because I picked out the proper camera for the job. And then I had a more realistic style to it. In this case, for the opening shot, as you can see, I used the Panavision, right? And the Panavision C series at 14 millimeters. I wanted to be a bit like very open shot. And then I changed to the close-up shot here, which was the eye shot. The eye shot was a bit more dreamy, so I used the ARRI Alexa 35. And I would suggest just using ARRI Alexa 35 for any kind of dreamy shots. A lot of the movies actually use ARRIs, and that is the preferred camera to use for a lot of movies. Most of this action sequences are not done on ARRI Alexas just because I guess they're pretty heavy, big, and you want to use something smaller. So in this case, the action sequences, I actually use the Red V Raptor, sorry, or the Sony Venice. Sony Venice is pretty big, but you'll get that Sony feel to it, I guess. So as you can see, you can choose your camera of choice. Let's say ARRI Alexa 35, and then you'd have to choose your lens. So the lenses here are also high-end lenses. So I don't know a lot of them except for like these Helios lens. There's the Petzval and the Helios lens, which are older lenses basically, but they have a characteristic to it. And I do own a Helios lens, so I do know what that one looks like. So I started off with that one and I went for 15 millimeters. So as you can see here, you can also choose the focal length for the camera. Focal length basically means how zoomed out, zoomed in you have as a shot. And you do have this function on some of the newer phones where you can change the focal length. It'll actually tell you which focal length you're using for the shot. So the ultra wide ones are usually very a low number like 8, and as an 8, here's a cross reference for what that would look like. So this fisheye lens is basically an 8. You get a fisheye effect. And for the close-up shots, I used 50 millimeters because that is the kind of standard. What you see is what you get from the human eye. If you were to go ahead and make a square in front of your face, that is what you will see as a 50 millimeter, kind of aspect ratio. All right, so I went ahead and played around with a bunch of these cameras for the shots and generated my images, converting them from the Google Gemini Pro image or the GPT 1.5 image to this new cinema style images that I'm going to be using for the video generation. And a lot of them turn out very well, especially if I had static shots. Oh, yeah. So if I had like static shots, pretty consistent descriptions, they did turn out really well. Some of the images I tried to do of action sequences didn't actually turn out that well. I'm not sure if it was the prompting. I'm assuming it's the prompting that I was using, but you kind of have to work with it a bit to get it to the best quality. And after this step is pretty simple. We're just going to go click on the video icon here. And for the video icon, all we have to do, we're just going to go down to the first portion over here. All we have to do is get our reference frame. So we do need a starting frame. So in this case, let's say we have this guy as a reference frame. And then we describe an action of what is happening. We can also select the movement, the camera movement that we want in this action sequence, such as handheld, static, zoom in. So for a lot of them, I was trying to go for handheld just because of how Cyberpunk is and its chaotic handheld nature. Also, you can do zoom in, dolly, dolly out for more static or more, calmer scenes, which is pretty good. You can also describe the action sequence that is happening in this video, and you can also choose between a 5 second and a 10-second video. There's also audio in this generation, which also helps a lot with this guy speaking because I'm not a voice actor, as you can tell. He did deliver pretty good lines a couple of times, and I just basically chose the one that I wanted the most. As you can see, I only did about 4 attempts here per video. So if you were to go ahead and do like a lot more, obviously you get better results. You can also continue with some of the descriptions that will give you also better results than myself. But I thought about 4 attempts was pretty good. Here, you can also insert ending frames. So for some of the sequences, I ended up going for 2 frames. When you do 2 frames, actually, you're not able to describe what is going in the scene. So in this case, or sorry, you're not able to add a movement function because you're basically going from one frame to the next frame. So if you have a zoomed in picture, let's say that is the ending frame that the camera will end up on, you can go ahead and explain what is happening in that sequence and it will generate that. Some of the action sequences didn't do too well, especially this, jumping off sequence. It was a bit difficult for it to connect those 2 frames together. So I don't suggest having 2 frames that are completely opposite of each other or very far from each other as a realistic guide. If you have a couple of frames that are pretty close to each other, it does work pretty well. Or the motion isn't as shaky, as extreme. It does a very good job, such as this sequence, which is just zooming in on him landing after a jump. You can see there's water splashes, there's a bunch of smoke coming out of the vents, and it's pretty animated. This was a really good sequence. I do enjoy the running sequence. This was really good. Not this one. Hold on. Yeah, other than like the drones kind of being weird and you can see his gun materializing in his hand and then kind of disappears in that jump. His running was really good. I like that he takes out his gun. You can see him taking out the gun and then yeah, that jump sequence didn't work too well, especially because they're two kinds of cameras. So we went from like a close up shot to an ultra wide shot. That might have kind of tricked it a bit. Also, there's sequences of extreme motion, such as jumping off of a roof. And I kind of didn't put any description for it to follow of what I want to happen. I just want to see what would happen if I put a start frame and an ending frame. And it did kind of try to merge them together there, as you can see. And it is a bit more realistic, where you can see he kind of lands there. And some of the other action sequences you can see here of the guy with a laser were kind of interesting. And I ended up using one of the later halves of this video here, which was pretty good. So if you set it to like 10 seconds, it does a good job. And maybe let's say the last couple of 3 seconds or 4 seconds, you can always clip around that. which we have to do anyway. I really like these zoom in shots. Those were the best, where you have the guy turn around or zoom in on his eye. Those were really great shots. Very smooth. I don't see a lot of distortion anywhere. So this was one of my favorite shots to work with here. And again, the text rendering is really good as well, with a bunch of effects on the letters. Yeah, really, really good shots here on most of these. And we can go ahead and actually download a lot of these videos. So we can just click download and save them and use them in our video production. And all I did for the video production was open up Clipchamp. If you don't know, Clipchamp is basically a free Microsoft tool built into Microsoft's Windows 11. So this was like zero investment on my part for this. And all we have to do is kind of choose a music sequence that we like. So I ended up going with a royalty-free one, and I clipped the videos around it in kind of like a story motion. I obviously had to go ahead and mute the audio a bit there for the guy to speak. But yeah, a lot of this was pretty short movements. I like this ship motion, which is pretty good. And then we time it with the music. And yeah, that was about 30 seconds of video generated, flipped around all the bad parts, and made sure that it kind of fits to the music. So that's basically it. If you want to go ahead and try it out, it is pretty fun to make, kind of silly videos, and maybe, you enjoy some of this process as well. So thank you again. Please make sure to subscribe, like the video, comment if you have any ideas, and thank you for watching.